Hey folks, it's time for another video production note. This is number 14. Moria Speedruns video production note. This time, in this one, we're going to be taking a little tour of the source code. We're going to look at the source code for the little timer program in the bottom right called Time's Up. The countdown thing that you don't normally see where it counts down and I have to clap. That's that little program. Something called the claptrap camera control. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4 with the checkbox. We're going to look at that. And another one. What's the other one? Do you know? I don't know. How would you know? I forget already. How can I forget? Oh yeah, the stat picker program. So, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to take a few minutes to go look at the source code. It's all C++. So, C++ in GTK-MM. So if you find that interesting, that's good. So that's what we're going to do. It clocks in at about a 35-minute show here. So strap yourself in and let's look at some source code, shall we? All right, let's see the code. Hey folks, let's go on a source code tour. Okay, the first software that's up is this thing. Click on it here. It's called Time's Up. That's the logo up there. It doesn't do anything. There's nothing in the menu there. And you've seen it operate. But what does it look like? What's the source code look like? Well, I'll show you. It's your typical setup here. There's a source directory, a data directory, and a glade directory. The data directory just includes the icons. And the glade directory contains the layout of the GUI form, which is really just a grid it's just a grid that we end up coloring in. So what does the source code look like? Well, it's kind of a lot larger than you'd expect. So I guess we'll look at the main first. If I can type. So, okay, that's not the main. That is the main class. Time's Up main is the main. All right. Down here you can see that we're instantiating the main class, and then we run it like that. Up here we have the command line parsing. So it's pretty simple. But it's not all of the command line parsing, is it? This is just checking for help and version. All of these options get parsed inside main. So, let's have a look at main, shall we? At the end of main, you can see that we're starting a driver class. And inside that driver class, we give all of the options that we read in on the command line. And once we're done making that driver class, we run the GTK main. I don't do it this way anymore. It's a lot simpler in my newer code. We'll see that later. Anyway, there's the command line processing. And that's the whole thing. But that's not the fun part. The fun part is how do you make it go? I forget. The fun part is the little boxes. So let's have a look at that. Here's Time's Up window. Those are all of the... you know what? We skipped a step, didn't we? Last thing we did is we made a driver object. There they're all being passed in. And that is where the Time's Up window is created. Yeah, I don't know why that driver class really exists. but it does. So we catch the quit signal here, and we show the main form. Alright. Alright, now this constructor makes a little bit more sense. These are all of our options coming in. There's our GUI. And like I said, it's just reading in a grid. There's nothing to it. There's the grid. Right? Right. What's this load table business? Well, by load table we mean prepare our grid for use. We make a bunch of columns and rows. Then we make a new object called square area. And if our option is of rounded boxes is checked, well, it's a rounded square area. Anyway, that's how you change the background color for each square. And actually, no, it's just the background color. And the attach puts it in place. R and C are our rows and columns. And we set some random options. Random properties on the grid. So that is, that's the time's up load. We can automatically start the clock when we begin, which is what auto start is all about. No, we don't want to see that. So that's that. That's load table. Now, somewhere here we kick it off. It's probably in reset. Here's reset. So this is making it go. This is setting up our form to take away the window decorations. We reset everything, and then there's our kickoff. In 1 second, 1,000 times 1 milliseconds is 1 second. We kick it off. Then there's the blinking part. Kickoff blinking in the third interval. That's at the very end. It kind of blinks. It's kind of a bug. So that's the reset. And eventually, kickoff will happen. And that's what kickoff does. So all it does is it waits another interval, calculated here. And eventually, when that interval is hit, on interval passed will happen. And this is where we make a new box. We make a new box and we change its color. So we have our different phases. We figure out what phase we're in. And we set the color appropriately. If we're blinking, then we do that. And there's the tricky part, I guess. Fill. Fill color, comma, previous color. Not sure why we're doing that. That must be something weird. And we calculate a new interval. And we do this again. So we wait for the new interval to pass, and then we call this same function. Yeah, I'm not sure about this complication, but it's basically the same idea. So fill, what does fill look like? Well, let's see. What's this clock map all about? So I guess the clock is the grid. It is the model for... No, what is this? What is this clock business? Load table. There it is. Okay. The clock is the label. Nope. The clock is the squared area. Square area, that's what it is. And that's our model. So there's the idea of the object on the screen, and then there's our idea of what the object on the screen is. Clock is that. So we were in fill, so let's go back to fill. So yeah, set color is a method on square area. So, I guess, I don't know what's going on here. Is previous color used anywhere? I don't think so. It is. Okay. So, at any given time, the clock has two colors. There is the part that we passed, and there's the part that we haven't passed. Previous color is the part that we passed. So, right now, all of the boxes are the same color as the background, and so they're all previous color. Later on, when it runs, some of them will turn color instead of previous color, and that's that. Here's the fancy draw a curved box if we're going to do that. So I guess there's this whole square area method, or class, sorry. And that's where we do the curved on the edges. It's kind of a lot for a little. And this is a hook that says, when we show this widget, do it this way. So there's our draw curved, or there's our draw square. Pretty cool, eh? And that is the whole thing, really. I'm not sure why this is doing that. I'm clicking it, but it's not starting. Strange. I don't know. Well, it works. That's probably why. The background is not black. Want to see the max intelligence chart? No. So, yeah. So it's buggy. I took a day to write this. I changed the background to be some other color, so this is probably why it's going off all crazy. It's not working when I click it. But you know what? I don't need it. It just runs. It does its thing. So let's run times up. Bam. Devil's Pie picks it up and puts it here. And it does its thing. Ta-da! It doesn't like to be in the background, does it? I think it's working in the background. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the Claptrap camera control. What does that source code look like? Well, let's just run it so you can see it. Claptrap camera control. You got to give it a file, so we'll just say foo, temp foo. Columns for num cameras. 4. And now we see that Devil's Pie picks it up and puts it in its right place. These are buttons we can press. And the checkbox means don't roam off of this. We didn't use the roam option here. But when you do use it, this makes sure that it doesn't leave number 4 when you're on number 4. And these are all making, these clicks are all making records inside temp foo. Timed records that we end up changing the camera to. So anyway, what does the source code look like? Well, let me show you. Alright, so here's a main. And it really is a main. At the bottom here, you can see that we're making our camera control object, and it takes in all of the different options that we read in on the command line. And then we pass it off to GTK to run. We say, hey, run this window. And the window is part of the camera control object. Above this, we create an app. We call it org.gnu. Blah, blah, blah. It's not really part of the GNU project. I just picked it randomly. I don't know what a better name would be. Maybe like something like org.moriaspeedruns.claptrap camera control. So anyway, this application actually handles the command line. And in order to allow that to happen, you have to start it with this. And you also have to bind to this signal. Otherwise, it just won't work. Up here, we just do some simple command line processing. We check for num cameras, we check for roam, check for columns. We check for the control file name, and we give them all to our camera control object. So it doesn't do much. It's very simple. And that's that. But the claptrap camera control is where the action is. Okay, so we come in here. This line here, you'll notice it's not C++, it's C. It's how we tell our application to use the dark theme. Not much to it. We grab our camera control file. That's our user interface file. Again, just like the time's up, it's just a grid, but it's a grid with that checkbox on the end of it. What do I mean by that? Let's have a look. Here it is here, camera control. Okay, I've disappeared here. There I am. So you can see that it's just one of these, right? There's our grid. And there's our checkbox. So you click on that, it says, oh, the ID for that is check button. Click on this. Hey, it's a grid. And then it's in some other boxes for spacing issues. So, but we're really interested in the grid object and the check button object. Let's go back into source. So now that makes sense. That's what that file is. There's our grid, and there's our check button. Huh. That was strange. Don't know what that was. Okay. So the next thing we do is we get rid of our row and we make some buttons. How many buttons are we going to make? Well, how many cameras are there and how many rows are there? And we insert those rows and columns. We make those buttons and then we bind our signal to the signal clicked. So on button pressed happens whenever one of these buttons is clicked. So let's look at that. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit special here. This bind method, it attaches C. So whatever C is our counter. So it'll say we clicked the 5th button in buttons. That's what's going on there. So it'll answer the question, which button did we press? Rather than having a method that says button 1, button 2, button 3, button 4 was pressed, we pass in what number to button pressed. Okay, here's button press. Pretty simple. If the one we clicked isn't the already active camera, then make it the active camera. Update the buttons, which means color them differently. And then, look at that fanciness. This is just system. We're calling a program. We're running claptrap listen, which is another program. And we give it the button, we give it the file, the temp foo in this case. And we give it the button number, but we have to add 1 because 0 is not a valid camera number to claptrap listen. And that's all it does. So this doesn't actually do the adding of the timestamp to the file. There is another program that does that called claptrap listen. That's what does that. So that is that. That's the basics of it anyway. Here's the update buttons. So this is coloring the buttons to look a little bit different. If it's the active camera, then the color goes to, I guess that's white. Nope, that's red. RGB, right? So it's pure red. And if it's not the active camera, then it's this crazy color. So that's like that crazy, I think it's that crazy yellow color. Might be the same yellow color as this background. Anyway, we make those Pango attributes and we set them on the label. And that's that. Pretty easy, eh? Now there is more code here. It has to do with, well, for one thing, there's the roam. So if you say roam, it's going to switch cameras. So, you like that? Switch cameras. So yeah, there's this heuristic I've come up with to change the camera such that the first camera gets the most time, the second camera gets less time than that, the third camera gets even less time than that, and the fourth gets even less time than that. The parameters are the duration, which is this array. So it's like how long does camera 1 stay? And once we pick it, how long does it stay there typically? And then there is the chance one, the intervals. And this is, where's intervals at? Right here. So this is setting an interval thing, which means how likely is each camera to be picked next time. So we're rolling these dice and we're figuring out which camera to switch to. And that's that. Okay, there is more here. You'll see things like check. Maybe you won't. See this stuff down here called check file? This is so that if anybody else changes temp foo while we're running, the check file will catch it and change our button. So it just gets run every so often. And if any other program runs claptrap listen that modifies that file, our GUI will see it and react. So anyway, it's a bit messy, that part. But that's the basics of it. Pretty easy, eh? So that's the claptrap camera control. So we've done, we've done the times up, we've done the camera control. How about the stat picker? That's pretty easy. I like to do this first. It's very short. Look at our main first. Doesn't read in any command line options, so the main is very simple. We make our GTK app. Again, we could have called it org Moria Speedrun Stat Picker because it's very Moria Speedrun specific. You'll see this in a second. And we say run this app. Run that window. Here is the window. We load up that UI file. And again, it's just a grid. It's a grid with a check button and a close button. I couldn't get Devil's Pie to work very well with with this stat picker. So I move the window myself to this place. So anyway, it starts out a lot closer to where it's supposed to finish up. So it's very Moria Speedrun specific. So there's our close button. So we'll see the function it calls here, close button pressed. But then there's all these buttons. So all of these buttons are on the GUI. They're in that grid. And when they're clicked, we run our on button pressed, but we bind a bunch of options to it. This true here means it's a stat, it's an attribute. So the vertical column on the left says 18/100. That's what that true is all about. gmoria stir is from gmoria stats, so that's the program that we're going to run to get the stats. This is the strength chart, so we give it a title called strength. Pretty cool, eh? And we have for all of these stats. And there's the score button. Moria score is what we run for that, and we call it score. And we say false because it has just regular numbers on the vertical side. Okay, and there's our background gray color. So let's look at on button pressed. There it was there. And look how specific this is. If we're hard coding a path, folks. That's horrible. But it's specific to this, so. Now that's, if you guys want this, you can have it. Let's see. So we're running display attribute chart, which I've shown before. Or display chart, depending on whether the first attribute is true or false. We pass in the program, we pass in the title. And instead of using the fancy glib way of doing it, we just call this the standard C library system. We just system out this program. And that is what brings up the chart. That will run the EOG thing, Eye of GNOME, that brings up the image. If close button is pressed, well, we just exit right away. There's one extra thing here that I didn't mention, and that is the check button get active. That is the, are we doing this today or not? It's just for today's stats or for the whole run. And that's, so yeah, that's that. I'll just run the stat picker here to show you what that is. There it is. That's the check button there. If we click any one of these, why didn't that work? Shall we debug this? Why isn't it there anymore? Do you know? I don't know. You know what? I call it something new now. Oy vey. Now it's called generate chart, and it doesn't actually show it. Which means I now need those display chart scripts back again. I'll create those later. But anyway, that is the display, that is the stat picker program. So we've done times up, we've done stat picker, we've done claptrap camera control. Last one I'm going to show you, is doing this for a while now, is countdown. I love countdown. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to disappear. Get ready to clap. 3, 2, I guess I should... And you clap. You clap when the red dot shows. That's what syncs the cameras. So when I clap my hands, it's starting the claptrap control file. Claptrap listen is being called, which kicks it off. So let's look at what we have here. That is what you call a very, very simple program, folks. Okay. You know what? We usually start with the main, don't we? org.gnu.countdown. It's just like the previous one. You make an app, make your object, and you run the window. And it's just like the other one in that there's a GUI. We access our GUI. That's wherever our Glade directory is. And we go get the window and we get the label. The label is the thing we're changing. It says we're changing the label. It's this huge font. And we change it for 3, 2, 1. And then we go get the Unicode circle. All right. So what can you say here? Well, this label has this, it's in the Squada 1 font. So the Squada 1 font has to be installed for this to work. We scale it up to 10, which is huge. And we set a foreground with mostly red. It's not pure red. Pure red would be 65535. All right, so there's our label. We say get ready to clap. And you know what? It's going to change the font size later too. We maximize our window. Change the background to black. Pretty cool. There's the kickoff. Where's kickoff? There it is. So in a second, we begin counting. And on second ticked. So every second happens, the tick thing happens. And there you go. If our count is 3, nope, we're counting down. So we start at count 3 and we decrement here. If the count is over 0, then we just change the number in the label. And we set our font to be huge, which is what that is, 35. Yeah, and once we hit -2, because we stick around a little bit afterwards, we exit. We could do the GTK main quit thing there, but it's just as easy to say exit. Just quits everything really fast. And we're at the bottom, that's that. All right. I hope you enjoyed the source code tour, folks. I'm going to make all this available. Like, if anybody wants to use this to do their own kind of roguelike video, then you can use this. So I think it's kind of cool. Like, you can make your own stats programs to go into your save game files. But yeah, I think some of this is useful, generally useful. The speedrun video assembler is very useful, I think. I've shown that in a previous one. Countdown is just cool. Yeah. So I guess we'll leave it there. The stat picker, I don't know. It's kind of cool. But the claptrap camera control, I can totally see other people using that. Just one more thing before I go. I just want to show you one more thing about claptrap camera control. And that is this. We're just going to say temp foo for a location. We're going to say num cameras 4 and columns 2. So it's a bit weird that it makes it that wide, but that's Devil's Pie doing that, saying it needs to be this wide. But the columns 2 is what the program picks up. And you can see that it makes a square. I can also make them vertical, so I can say columns 1. Pretty cool, eh? Yeah. So you can configure this to be any kind of shape you want that is boxy. Anyway, that's that. Yeah, you can have any shape you want as long as it's a box. Alright, that is the source code tour. I hope you liked it. We'll be back next time when, I don't know, I'll fix some more bugs and maybe change the desktop a little. Who knows? Alright, take it easy. Bye-bye.